Hello and welcome to the Money Marketing Podcast. I'm Lois Vallely, Chief Reporter, and for this episode I am joined by Andy Payne, who is head of SJP's Academy, as well as 4 graduates from the Academy. So we have Marta Depenska, Ovi Onomakpome, and I'm really sorry Ovi if I got that wrong at all. You can correct me when I ask you to introduce yourselves. Molly O'Donnell and Jack Benton. And so yes, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
So to start off, maybe Andy, could I ask you to introduce yourself and then just say a bit about how you came to lead SJP's Academy? I believe it launched just over 10 years ago. So if you could just talk a bit about how it's grown and evolved since then as well, that would be great.
Certainly, and thanks for having me today, Lois. So, yeah, I joined SJP 8 years ago to head an Academy office in Solihull, so to open that office. And since I've been part of the Academy over that 8-year period now, and now I head effectively the field team that supports all of our Academy and new recruits, partners and advisors across the UK. The Academy's evolved immensely over the last 8 years. When I joined, it was based around 3 offices, very bound by geography, very much a classroom-focused first 6 months before our new recruits were launched into the field. We've evolved now to harness the best of technology. It's much more flexible in its approach, much more accessible. And now we have a sort of nationally consistent academy that gives an opportunity for people from Elgin down to Exeter to access our academy programme in a way that suits them.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So to our graduates now, I'm not going to go in any particular order, but just the order I've got on the screen. Marta, you're up first. So could I ask you to introduce yourself and just say a bit about why you decided to get into financial advice and also why you went through SJP's Academy?
No, yes, sure. So obviously I've been with SJP now for over a decade. And to be honest with you, that wasn't my destiny at all. It's not like I woke up and decided, yes, I'm joining a financial services. It was a pure incident. My background is actually international law. It just happened to be that I've been made redundant. And I was just looking for a career where I can, grow my business, grow my practice. And I was introduced to SJP and the Academy by a previous partner. And yes, the rest is the history. So I'm a founder and managing director of a practice which is called Aon Wealth. I've been doing this for over a decade. And I think the key thing for me, why I wanted to set up my own practice, because it just gives me a flexibility to actually do what I want and choose sort of the people I want to work with. And the support was great, and the support of the Academy, and I couldn't agree with Andy more. It definitely evolved what we're seeing now and what we've seen more than a decade ago. It's great to see we've got more women, because in my intake, there was only 3 of us. And so it's very refreshing. We've seen young, faces. And but yes, for me, the key thing was that I can run a successful practice, which I absolutely love what I do, and give me a flexibility to actually balance my work-life balance.
Perfect. Thank you, Marta. Ovi, same question.
Yeah, so in my case, what attracted me to SJP? So for me, it's slightly different, my experience to what Marta's was, because I actually do feel it was my destiny. So it's really, really bizarre how I ended up in SJP, but I started out in retail. And that was a scenario where I was going up the corporate ladder. I was heading towards becoming a director. And I thought, this is just not for me. It's just, I'm so separate from the client. And it was one of those things where I was managing stores right across the country. So it was a stressful period. And I thought, look, I need to get back to a period where I was pursuing a dream, pursuing that ability to work for yourself, and where the client would be the focus, not a means to an end, but an end in itself, in themselves. So I looked for something that could help me to get that. And it was serendipity that sort of pointed me in the direction of St. James's Place. So it's not like St. James's Place was something that I thought, so this is definitely where I'm going to be going. But serendipity pointed me in the direction. So it was an individual who knew somebody else who had been in St. James's Place, who spoke to me about St. James's Place. I still didn't really consider it. Then I went on this massive Spanish pilgrimage. It was a Christian pilgrimage called the Camino de Santiago. And I did that. And it was there that I started to realize that I need to be going to the direction of running my own business definitively. And then St. James's Place manifests itself again. St. James's Place, Camino de Santiago. Santiago actually means St. James's in Spanish. So I felt as if my camino, my destiny was being, if you like, designed for me. And I ended up in St. James's Place through a friend. In fact, I had originally tried to get into St. James's Place in 2007 with a pilot program. Before it even became known that SJP was doing something. And that didn't work out. They said no to me. And lo and behold, a few years later, in 2012, I met up with a friend who had been he had gone through Sandhurst, and I had had a sort of stint in Sandhurst, and then came out, and he introduced me to St. James's Place. And from then on, I've just not looked back. It's been, for me, a great experience. Going through the academy was probably the best thing that I ever did. And building a business as well, focused on clients. One of the best things I've ever done. The support that the academy was able to provide was also instrumental in getting me to where I am now. And I started about the same sort of time as Marta.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Molly, what about you?
So yes, mine's more similar to Marta's, I would say, but I've been doing it for much lesser time. So I did the academy in 2019. Mine was similar in that I studied law. I was quite new out of university, so did law at university, but knew that I didn't want to be going down that route. I really loved the idea of advising clients and dealing with clients on a day-to-day basis in a professional services capacity and being the expert in what we do, helping people. But for me, I didn't want to practice one area of law forever and be pigeonholed into that one area. So I went into consultancy for a year, understood a lot more about businesses, how they worked, and looked at the areas that I wanted to consider. We were actually based at a big asset management company, so I thought that could be down the route, but they were very much on the trading side. My brother-in-law is still, but was much before me, an SJP partner down in Cardiff. So when I was looking at roles and trying to work out what route I want to go down, he said, I think this could be something that you really enjoy because it's combining advising clients in a professional capacity with not being pigeonholed, meeting people on a day-to-day basis, and involves the asset management side. So I went through the SJP Academy from there. For me, what attracted me to SJP is that unlike people who used it as a career change, I was very much at the start of my career. So I wanted something that had the support, the structure, and helping me to set up a business and an introduction to the financial services world, as opposed to just going it alone. So that was my story and how I came about coming into financial advice.
That's perfect. Thank you. And then Jack, last but not least.
Thanks, Lois, and thank you for having me. Before life at St. James's Place, I worked at an American multinational investment management company. So I dealt with different divisions across the globe. And over time, I felt that was the part I enjoyed the most, which was liaising with people internationally, different cultures, different peoples. And that was something that I enjoyed in my day-to-day more than the job itself. I also had a family friend who was a partner, an advisor in St. James's Place, and was always chipping away at me to come into this world. And over time, through discussions, that became something that I thought more seriously on, because as I mentioned, I was having more of a keen desire to work with people, and financial advice is people at its core. And I guess the second part is I knew that this profession offered the ability to make a direct impact on someone's life, whereas working for a large corporate, you go to work day to day, but you don't really know who that benefits or prospers, right? So I think that's what then also helped choose St. James's Place, being a FTSE 100 company, is that if I'm going into a profession where I impact someone's life and I do want to go into financial advice, what better option to do it with a large corporate behind me, with the structure and the support behind it, to learn in the right way through the academy, and go on to this journey, as it were, from the best foundation possible, which is what St. James's Place has ultimately given me.
Yeah, definitely. No, that sounds great. So Andy, maybe if we come to you first, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges for advisors at the moment, or at least for the advice profession?
I think for the advice profession, it's definitely bridging the advice gap and creating that availability for financial advice and accessibility to a financial advisor. So when I started in the industry, there were about 250,000 accredited financial advisors across the UK. That figure's around 30,000 now. And in a marketplace with rising affluence, people are living longer. There's a growing savings gap, pensions freedom, and political and economic uncertainty. That need for face-to-face financial advice has never been greater. But we're in an environment where there's been a diminishing pool of financial advisors and ready access to financial advice. So I think that's the industry. That's the challenge that the industry faces at the moment. The key challenge.
Yeah, definitely. No, I'd agree. Certainly, from what I've seen speaking to people, the advice gap is quite a big thing. And before I joined money marketing, my preconception of somebody who needed financial advice was sort of, and I think it's probably the same for a lot of people who aren't very close to the advice market. They might think it's for, rich millionaires wanting to turn millions into billion, mostly white middle class men, to be honest. But actually, there's a much bigger sort of selection of clients who or potential clients who do need advice, and some of them are younger, some of them might not have a massive pot of money. But yeah, so definitely, I think your point is very.
There are 12 million people in the UK today with assets of between £50,000 and £5 million. So there's a huge range there of financial needs. And these people that need face-to-face trusted financial advice. So a huge need there for the people that you see on this call today.
Yeah, definitely. Marsha, what about you? What do you see as sort of some of the biggest challenges for advisors and for the advice profession at the moment?
I think challenge is always there. So I wouldn't actually personally see it as a negative thing. I think every challenge is an opportunity. And I think when you decide to step in and become an advisor and run your own shop, you need to have a right mindset to do so. And I think the more comfortable you get yourself familiar that it's not going to be an easy ride, the better for you. Okay. And I mean, this year has been exceptional for all of us. I think there's been like the worst years in the market since I started. But at the same time, is the time of opportunity. This is actually the time to show us, our clients, you know what, those are very difficult times, but we are here. And we are here to support you. This is a long-term goal, and at the end of the day, this is something which probably will happen in the next decade or so. So I always, this year for me it was a year of reflection, but I don't really see it as a negative aspect. In everything, you can turn it to be a positive thing, and And like I said, the key thing is for a new advisors, a new business owner stepping into this industry, you just need to have the right mindset, and that you can do it. And the more you get yourself comfortable, I would say, with the word no, the better as well, because you will become resilient. And the thing is, it's like, and I was asked this question before, I really think the control is with us, not with the outside forces. We really need to focus on what we can control. And I think what can make or break being, a good advisor, a good business owner, especially in a challenging times like this, it's actually knowing what you want as a practice owner. Because when then you know how you can communicate with the people you work and you try to help. You need to basically understand what is your why. And for me, like I get very excited working with my clients. They inspire me. I mean, it's an exceptional journey knowing that so many people entrusted me with their money. So a tip going forward, just be focused, be determined. Challenging times are here and they will always stay. Just turn this into an opportunity.
Definitely. No, I think that's a great message. And what you were saying there really reminded me of, I did the opening address for the Money Marketing Awards at the end of September. And I started off, and it was, just at that point when the pound had hit parity with the dollar and everything was just going, I know it's still not great, but everything just seemed to be going wrong. And I was just listing off all the things that were bad, and people were starting to laugh mirthlessly. And then, I did turn it around and said, this is when financial advisors are most important to their clients, because they can.
Absolutely. And I think what you also said, and you, Andy, it's great actually seeing that St. James's Place, it's getting its new fresh look and it's addressing the younger audience. I mean, we have individuals in their 20s, 30s now thinking about, what can I do with how can I plan? So I think it's a great opportunity to actually see how we as a company, as an individuals, we can reach out to, a younger audience, and the one who actually see, a financial advice in a different way. It's great to see that we are becoming more Apple friendly. Everything is going to happen on the phone. I think those are the keys, how we can evolve and how we can become better in providing a really, really exceptional wealth management and financial planning services at the different stages of different clients' lives.
Yeah, definitely. Really important. Ovi, what about you? What do you see as some of the biggest challenges for advisors at the moment?
I think it's a great question. There are multiple ways to look at this. And I do agree with Andy around the challenges we've got from an advice gap perspective. But I do see it's rather like how Marta sees it, as a huge opportunity for the advice profession. Because there's so many people out there who just do not receive professional advice or professional financial advice. But I feel the key challenges that we have as a profession, not individually as advisors, but as a profession, is the fact that there's so many people out there who are just not aware of the benefits that they get from structured professional financial advice. The fact that they can see their cash flows all the way up to age 90 or 100, pass on assets from one generation to the other, build assets, use compound growth now to literally change their lives. And also utilize the allowances that are available that the government provide them with for free, that they have no idea how to put together as a piece of a puzzle. And this is where the financial advice individuals come in, because a lot of individuals are very busy with their lives, building their lives, and they forget about the fact that they can only see 2 to 3, 4, 5 years in advance. They're pretty much focused on the next promotion or buy the next house or things along those lines, not realizing that there's so much more to financial planning. And when they start to look and understand what their goals from a financial perspective are, it transforms their lives. It puts everything into perspective. And so it's that lack of knowledge that is, I guess, one of the biggest challenges that we have. Then is quickly followed up by its corollary, if you like, where people think, I can make a quick buck. So they would see something like crypto and think, oh my goodness, there's no need for financial advice. I can be rich tomorrow. But it doesn't always work that way, because you're now working in an all-regulated space. And they don't appreciate the fact that they're protected as clients because you've got this big body, the Financial Conduct Authority, that does everything for them from a retail client perspective. So you have that. You have property situations where people think, I can make 7%, 8%, 9% guaranteed. Why do I need financial advice? So it's all of those sorts of things that are traps set for the person who does not really realize that you can't get great returns for free. And these things take time. That's the sort of challenge that the advice profession has, how to overcome all of that.
Definitely, no, totally agree. Interesting you mentioned crypto. I did a little experiment where I bought £30 worth of crypto in November 2021. It's now worth about £12 or something. So that wasn't an experiment. I'm going to see if I can expense it. Great, thank you, Obi. So, Molly, what about you? Some of the biggest challenges for advisors in the profession?
Yeah, so I think it does tie in with what everyone said so far. But for me, it's about communicating what we do to people. So a lot of people have bad experience or bad views on the financial services industry as signing up clients as policyholders, very transactional. You never see them again after the first meeting. And that's very different to the world that we operate in now and how I know that me and my colleagues work with advisors. So for me, it's communicating that actually it is a full advice process. It's holistic planning. It's taking everything into consideration, not just recommending an investment or pension. So I think for me, it's communicating that actually times have changed and demonstrating our value, especially with younger people. I think it's important to highlight the difference, and some people won't want full advice, and that's fine as well. But highlighting the difference between those schemes that are low cost and you see on the tube and TikTok and all those kinds of adverts, and actually differentiating what we do and the value that advice can add. So that ties into the same. I would say the other challenge that the profession faces, and this is probably the same with any investment, is actually discussing volatility with people and making sure that people know that there are going to be periods of volatility. A lot of people that I've spoken to at the moment who are ready to go ahead with an investment have said, no, not going to do it now after what's happened with the stock market. So I think it's a challenge to educate people around that, talk about time and how actually over time the returns will come, but it is important to be aware that the volatility is there. So I think a lot of people, in my experience, that aren't invested before, haven't been invested before, have become a bit scared by the drops after COVID and recent volatility. So a challenge is getting to those people and making sure that they know that's part of the cycle, but volatility doesn't mean it's necessarily the wrong thing to do. So I think it's about education and communication with clients and potential clients.
Definitely, no, yeah, I totally agree. I had a personal experience when I had some shares in Lloyd's that I'd inherited from my grandmother, and just the nosedive they took during COVID was ridiculous. I very nearly sold them then, and then I was like, what am I doing? I'm just going to sell them when they're lowest value. But I think it's very much a knee-jerk reaction that's very easy for clients to make. And yeah, that's where advisors can really help with trying to stop them doing that. Yeah, great. So, Jack, what about you? Challenges for advisors and the profession?
I think a lot of it's already been said, and I echo a lot of the views of everyone else on the group. The perception of us in the market is a big one for me. In terms of, I think how much you need to have is one. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, how much money do I need to have to speak to you?" And that's a big problem. And it's a big discussion of whether in the academy you say I'm a financial advisor, I'm a financial planner, or a wealth management, because they all seem to have different connotations, yet we all do the same thing, right? Especially coming out of the academy. And that's a problem because, yeah, we deal with wealthy people, but I think people then thinking they've not got enough money to say, speak to myself, then it's normally that group of people that then who don't take advice are probably going to suffer more. And that for me is a big risk, especially with the current climate. And also then what we do. There's people that have said, oh, I didn't realize you did that. I didn't realize you did that, because wealth management or financial advice seems to only be if you've got a pot of cash and coming to us to invest in. That's very much not the case. We're holistic advisors. We deal with protection, retirement planning, as Ovi's mentioned, legacy, all the rest of it. And there's a much bigger thing that we can add value. So when people see, as Molly said, these quick fix funds, they'll think, well, I'll just do that and not get advice. They've missed the whole picture. So I think that's a big risk. And touching on what Molly said there about volatility, I think, we all know there's a cost of living crisis just now. So then there's a couple of calls coming in saying, I'm going to take more money, say, from a pension to kind of meet that need. But it's getting that across to the client that taking money out as we planned was fine, but taking more out on lows has a greater impact on the value of your fund and I guess the longevity of it. So to not get that advice, as someone else was saying, this impact of only thinking of 3 and 5 years away, that could have a real impact to the longevity of your fund in 10, 20 years' time. It's not to say that we're the withdrawal police and we don't let you have your money, but it's how do we get that across and how we temper that and plan it out so they have those funds for longer. And I think that's where I seem to be having a few more discussions over the last few months.
No, that's interesting. Yeah, definitely. I think it's very easy, as I said, to make knee-jerk reactions, but actually, advisor can really help is sort of in saying what they should be doing rather than just reacting to external factors. So yeah, definitely really important. So you, a couple of you mentioned sort of engagement there, sort of saying what advisors do more and where they can provide value. But I suppose another aspect is where engagement comes in handy is to sort of try and fill the advisor gap a bit in letting people know earlier on that financial advice is a good career, because certainly, and I've said this quite often, when I was at school, it wasn't even mentioned. It didn't come up. It was lawyer, doctor, journalist, all these sort of careers that people might want to go into. But financial advice was never even mentioned at my school or university. And I that was a while ago now. I'm not going to say how long. But I just wondered if you see that as a massive issue still. And what do you think advisors existing in the profession can do about it? So I'll go to Andy first again, then I might go to Jack first, just to not leave you last again. So Andy, what do you think?
So I mean, I think definitely sort of presenting the financial advice, wealth management as a profession has been a challenge. I think it's one that we're starting to surmount now, and we're making better connections, I think, with universities now and secondary, tertiary education, and presenting that case for financial advice, wealth management being a great long-term profession. You look at the average age of anybody joining the academy, it's around 34, and that's set against average age for SJP of around 47. And the industry 58. So I think the academy is playing a huge role in sort of debunking that myth around the profession, the advice profession being for middle-aged white males. I think we've done a great job in reaching out to various professions, certainly in the second career space. I think that the challenge that I faced into this year, and I think we're facing into increasingly as an academy, is how we make the academy more relevant and financial advice profession more relevant to different subsections and communities in the UK. So we get a broader representation across the whole advice space. And I think that's one that's starting to move. Permafrost is starting to melt, but I think that will be a huge focus for us in the academy and across St James's Place on into 2023 and beyond.
Yeah, definitely. Great. Jack, what do you think about making the profession more attractive or even just better known to people so that it's a sort of viable path for them to take in their career?
Yeah, I think that the issue is, as Andy mentioned, the perception for a financial advisor had to be that you were borderline having grey hair later in your career, worldly wise, and you could only part advice if you were of that, I guess, generational segment. I think that's changing now, and I think it's changing because I may be wrong, but previous generations were quite private about their finances. We didn't talk as much. Think of us today on podcasts. Podcasts are a big thing now. People are willing to open up about feelings and thoughts and views. And I think even what we're doing today is a great thing to shed light on. You can part advice. You can work hard, be intelligent, and advise someone that's 20 years older than you, and that's okay. And it comes from, I guess, talking about it, doing what we're doing today is a key thing.
Yeah, definitely. Andy, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, and I think Jack's absolutely spot on. And I think a big driver behind that is this increasing focus on intergenerational wealth and the fact that I think in generations gone by, I think it was more common to make a decision or consider options for a couple in isolation, whatever stage they were, life stage they were at. And I know from my own personal experience, we're making decisions now, family decisions that have a bigger impact on getting my children onto the property ladder, protecting grandparents and making sure that they're provided for. And I think that's playing a part in making the need for financial advice more relevant across the generations. And in turn, I think then that it builds an opportunity to connect with younger advice talent and trust them to do a great job, because we're thinking more about, well, how do we make decisions that have an impact across 3 or 4 generations, not just my own personal circumstances as they stand today.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really key point, I think. Do any of the other 3 who I haven't asked yet have any thoughts on that additional?
I would just agree with what Jack said. I think more people are talking about money now. I see a lot of Instagram pages that are along the lines of saving, education, and just making it more simple, I would say. And that's one of the things that I'm always very conscious of, is making it jargon free and accessible. And I think although there are faults to things being advertised on the tube, actually getting people talking about it is important, and people can then make their own decisions. I think in terms of talking about it amongst friends and family, passing on referrals is a great way to build a client base as an advisor, but also gets people talking about finances. So if you can ask someone to pass on someone similar, then actually that's good, because people know that it's a career option and also advice is accessible.
Definitely. Ovi, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, so I was going to say, so this is probably a minority view. I can't be certain. I've not done any exhaustive study or anything along those lines. But what I've seem to have noticed in this industry, especially as people coming into the profession are looking at financial advice as a career, is that financial advice is a bit of an ageist space. And it's ageist in that a lot of the individuals who are here or who have occupied this space previously are of the older generation. So people are coming in, especially from 2012, where we had the whole RDR become a thing. Now we're in a position where people don't necessarily have to take a look at an individual's gray hair, as Jack has mentioned, as evidence of somebody who's got experience, is worldly wise, and is able to give you the requisite advice that is necessary for you. Now, young people would have seen that aged individual as the person to go to, and people who are in his cohort or her cohort, usually would have been a man, and they would have seen them as the right person to go to because they have the requisite amount of gray in their hair. Now, unfortunately, what we've now got is a very rigorous means of qualifying individuals. So people who are young, who are in their 20s, are in a good position to be able to go out and give advice, because you've got a rigorous process, especially if you go through a place like the SJP Academy, We've got a rigorous process of being able to identify needs, identify solutions to clients. And it's also backed up by a strong compliance team in a place like St. James's Place. So you've got multiple checks to make sure that these individuals are able to develop their career right from the start as young individuals. But unfortunately, the perception is still there that the young individuals are not the sort of people who could be given 50-year-olds advice. So that's I guess, a challenge that has to overcome. And I think there's also what Molly has been mentioning, this explosion in things of people who are not regulated, giving financial guidance right across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and having 3 million followers. Whereas the regulated individual has to deal with person on a one-to-one basis. These guys are able to spread this message to millions of people at the same time. But it also means that the youth are connected to this idea of financial freedom. They just need to be speaking to the right people.
Definitely. Marta, did you have anything you'd like to add on that?
Yeah, no, I think that I personally think that things are already changing for better. I mean, it's when I was at university a long time ago, I never knew about the concept of the financial planning, financial advice, and etc. And I wish I did. So saying that, my daughter is going to do her A-levels, and it was great to see. We went actually, so she's chosen business and an economy, and one of the aspects within those modules was actually financial planning. And I was so positively surprised. So I can see that things are already changing, but I can agree with everyone else. And as especially, with like Molly and Jack, who are, the sort of the younger generation of advisors. I think what we need to see more to make it more attractive, it's a different way of communicating. And the way I see it is already changing with St. James's Place. I love the article in the latest Investor magazine when there was actually a younger talking about, pension needs a facelift, and I couldn't agree more. So it's about highlighting the importance, but it would be great to see that actually SJP does a bit more about that in terms of bringing that younger, fresher language to communicating things. And social media plays a crucial role as well. So I can already see that, we as a company, we communicate great things, probably just maybe communicate in a way it's becoming actually more attractive. So someone who is, finishing A-levels can consider, do you know what? Actually, I can see this as a great profession, and why I don't consider academy and do the CII, or if you want, go to the university. So just to conclude, it's things are already happening. Things are already looking better. I think it's just wrapping up in a language which is more attractive to the younger audience would be the next step.
Yeah, definitely. Andy, did you want to?
Yeah, just one thing to add, and it's just a statistic based around our client base. If you look at the first half of 2022, of our new clients to St. James's Place, around a third were under the age of 40. Now, traditionally, our client base is about 12% under the age of 40. So it's evidence, I think, that a message is starting to get out there that there is a need. There's starting to be a connection forming and a demand forming in younger generations, and we're starting to service that now. I think the academy's at the forefront. Those coming through the academy at the forefront of driving that. So very early signs of positivity, but positive signs nonetheless.
Perfect.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I come across so many young entrepreneurs in the late 20s, early 30s, running an incredibly successful companies, and they don't understand the concept of financial planning. They understand the concept, as we've discussed, of, what someone told me I can do this and get 20% returns. So I think, yes, no, great steps going forward, just a bit, probably just a bit more of it.
Perfect. Yeah, definitely. We're probably coming to the end of our podcast now, but I just wanted to ask you finally for a sort of one piece of advice that you'd give someone looking at financial planning as a potential career. And I'm going to go to Molly first, if that's okay this time.
Yeah, of course. I would say just go for it. I think I was so nervous when I started, having not been in the industry, thinking that I was going to be out of my depth, not being able to advise. Oh, well, I thought I could advise them, but not being accepted to advise people who are older than me. And every preconception and nervousness that I had has been combated by training, getting out and seeing clients. So I think I was very nervous and I thought, I'll just go for it and see what happens. And it worked out really well. So my advice would just be to get stuck in and to speak to everyone possible so that you can learn everything from people who are already doing it.
Perfect. Ovi, what about you? One piece of advice.
Okay, so I think this might be controversial as a piece of advice that I would give to someone who's starting out in the industry, that this is not an industry for anyone. So it's the sort of industry where you do have to check with yourself if this is the sort of thing that you would like to do, because it does take a lot out of you. It's very tumultuous, but the rewards are great because you change people's lives. You are in a position where you are constantly there. I have clients who say to me that they go to bed, this is Mrs. and Mr. will go to bed talking about me and the advice that I've just given them. So it means that you are ensconced in a family's life. But then with that great power, as has been said, comes great responsibility. You are constantly there, always there for them. And you can't treat what it is you do lightly because you become an integral part of people's lives. So it's one of those things where you have to be sure that this is the sort of industry that you will be good in and you will blossom if it's for you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And Jack, what about you?
I would echo what Molly said, that if you are thinking about it, and also echoing what Ovi said, you do have to have that grit. Yes, you have flexibility in the life that we have as advisors. It's not a 9 to 5, so there's benefits, but it also means you might be up late at night sometimes. But go for it if you feel you've got that determination and grit, because you don't have to be the finished article. It echoes back to what I was saying earlier, that you thought you had to be worldly wise to do this job. You don't. And as I say, to finish that, you don't have to be the finished article. You can come into this profession and grow and continue and learn on the job, as it were. But yes, to what Ovi said, it's a rewarding job, but there's effort behind it.
Great, perfect, thank you, Marta.
I can echo what Guy said, and I agree with Ovi as well. It's definitely not a walk in a park, and for me, I think the key thing is to actually not just become a financial advisor, but become, you are in a right place. I think the key thing to start with is actually knowing why you want to do it in the first place. Because if you know why you want to do it in the first place and you have an end goal in mind, I mean, the road is going to be extremely bumpy, but the rewards at the end are exceptional, and the client relationships and everything. So I think start with why and have an end goal in mind. And actually, I would probably disagree with Molly, because I think that, what makes me more successful is actually understanding whom I want to work with. Okay. Not just going, talking to everyone, just really taking and understanding time, who I want to work with, who I actually can help, who will see the value I'm adding in their lives, because not everybody will see that. So those are sort of my 3 things. Know your why, have an end goal in mind, and visualize those people you want to work with. For me, it's a recipe for success.
Great, thank you.
Just to clarify on that, I mean talking to everyone in the industry, learning from everyone. I would definitely agree with Marta.
Absolutely. And surround yourself. I couldn't agree more. And surround yourself by a network of people you can discuss things and talk to your peers, talk to your, senior partners. I constantly talk to my colleagues who've been in industry for 30 years plus, and we bounce back ideas, talk to the tax and technical team. Knowledge is power.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. And Andy, what about you? One piece of advice.
Well, Marta stole my piece of advice, so I'll give that.
Sorry, Andy.
I'll reinforce that, and then I'll give another piece. So definitely understand your why. Just start with the why. This is back to Ovi's comments about this is not necessarily a profession for everybody, and there are tough yards to be trod before any degree of success. So that why, understanding that why, is a really powerful anchor when times do get tough, or if you hit any obstacles, it will help keep you on track. And then the other piece of advice for me is build a workable and well thought out plan on how you will succeed. Now that might take some input from people that have passed through the academy, from people that have been successful historically in the industry. But that well thought out plan gives you a real tangible roadmap to run on, and I think really sort of amplifies that chance of you being successful.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. That is all we've got time for this episode, I'm afraid. But thank you all so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed chatting to you all. And then to our listeners, do listen to this podcast and others on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And to see all the rest of our lovely money marketing content, do head to our website, and you can also follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn and Instagram. Thank you.